Hello, everyone. Now let's listen to the story. Your kingdom was built on sugar, butter, and chocolate. Go Big or Go Home Bakery wasn't just a name. It was a philosophy, an oath you whispered to yourself every morning as you tied on your crisp white apron. The air here was always thick with the sweet scent of happiness, a happiness you kneaded and shaped with your own two hands. Brooke, are those cakes ready for the van? Your voice rang out sharp and decisive, cutting through the steady whir of the mixers. You were a general on your own battlefield, and every employee was a loyal soldier. Boss, I'm just finishing the fondant on the unicorn birthday cake, Brooke replied, her hands still moving swiftly. You nodded, your gaze already shifting to Nicole. Nicole, how are the pastries for the Jordan party? They're an early delivery tomorrow. I'll get to them tonight, boss. I'm working on the Davidson cookie order right now. Good. Sarah. I got it, boss, Sarah called back before you could even ask. You smiled the satisfied smile of a captain steady at the helm. Good. You all know what to do. With me now, go big or go home. Go big or go home. The response was weak. You frowned. That was pathetic. Again, with your whole hearts, go big or go home. This time, the cheer was louder, full of energy. That was the energy you needed. That's it. Back to work, everyone. You watched them, your army of talented bakers, and a warm sense of pride swelled in your chest. This was a world you could control. Everything had a recipe, a process, a predictable outcome. Every cake was perfect, every order delivered on time. Here, you were the queen. But when the sun went down, when the apron came off, and the bakery door was locked, you returned to another kingdom. One that was slowly losing its warmth. Your house was terrifyingly quiet. The dinner you had carefully prepared for 6:30 was now cold on the table. You looked at the empty chair across from you where David, your husband, was supposed to be. At 6:30, the food had been hot. At 7, when you called him, it was still warm. At 7:30, when you texted, the warmth was beginning to fade. At 8, when you called again, it was completely cold, just like your heart. You heard the key turn in the lock. David walked in looking tired. He didn't even meet your eyes. The food's cold, he said bluntly, loosening his tie. It was hot at 6:30. You replied, your voice trying to stay calm, but inside a storm was raging. You wanted to scream. You wanted to ask where he'd been, what he was doing, who he was with. You wanted to ask why the late meetings were becoming more frequent, why he always came home smelling of a strange perfume, why he flinched every time you touched his phone. But you didn't. You just stayed silent, clearing the cold plates, feeling like you were clearing the wreckage of your marriage. Claire? He said your name, but you didn't turn around. Claire, a second time. Claire, the third time, his voice held a note of impatience. You turned your eyes empty. What? Chloe, your 16-year-old daughter, drifted by like a ghost. Headphones on, eyes glued to her phone screen. Hi, sweetie. Did you sleep well? You asked, trying to grasp for some connection. She mumbled something unintelligible. I asked if you slept well. It was fine. Why wouldn't it be? Chloe answered indifferently and disappeared behind her bedroom door. Silence fell again. David was watching TV. Chloe was living in her virtual world, and you were standing in the middle of the kitchen, feeling more alone than ever. You were the queen of a sugar-coated kingdom, but an invisible citizen in your own home. The next day, an unusual event broke the routine. A young, beautiful, and confident woman walked into the bakery. You recognized her immediately. Amber, David's colleague. You had met her once at the company party last year. Claire, right? She smiled a smile that seemed friendly, but sent a chill down your spine. We met at the company party. I'm here to order a cake. Oh, right. Hi, Amber. You forced a professional smile. What can I get for you? The company wants to get David a thank you gift for all his dedication, Amber said, her eyes sparkling. He's been working so hard. An uncomfortable feeling crept over you. Oh, is that so? Well, we have a list of our popular items on the website. You can take a look. I have an idea, Amber said immediately, not even glancing at the list. How about a hazelnut chocolate mousse cake? You froze. David doesn't like chocolate. A flicker of confusion crossed Amber's face just for a second, but you saw it. Oh, really? Well, okay then. I'll just order online later. She turned and left in a hurry. It was great seeing you again. As Amber left, you stood motionless. How could she not know David didn't like chocolate? If they were just normal colleagues. A small but toxic seed of doubt began to sprout in your mind. That night, Nicole, your best friend and employee, dragged you out. Josh, her boyfriend, had just broken up with her again. And Nicole didn't want to waste the fancy dinner reservation she'd made. Claire, come on, please, she begged. You need a night off, too. I don't want to ask Brooke, she'll get the wrong idea. You looked at Nicole's sad but hopeful face and couldn't say no. But the fancy restaurant with its $70 pasta dishes only made you feel out of place. Actually, you said suddenly, let's go get burgers and beers. Nicole's eyes lit up. Really, you're the best friend ever. At the noisy bar, amidst the loud music and the smell of beer, you finally let your defensive walls crumble. After a few drinks, the words you had been holding back for so long started to pour out. Nicole, you began your words, slurring slightly. Thanks for tonight. I feel like David and I are strangers. We haven't had a proper meal together in so long. Nicole listened, her eyes full of sympathy. You don't get it. You continued, tears welling up. You're not married. You don't have a teenage daughter who's glued to social media. Everything feels like it's falling apart at once. The business is great, but my family, it's disintegrating. Then do something to fix it, Nicole advised. Go on vacation. Take a week off. You've been working too hard, Claire. You've lost focus on what's really important. Nicole's words were a wake-up call. Maybe she was right. Maybe you had been so busy building your bakery kingdom that you had forgotten that your real kingdom, your home, needed nurturing. You really think it would work? You asked, a glimmer of hope appearing. 100%, Nicole confirmed. And while you're gone, I'll watch the bakery. You laughed. You'd run off all my customers. Hey, that night you returned home with a new resolve. You would talk to David. You would book a trip. You would save your marriage. But as you were lost in these thoughts, your phone rang. An unknown number. Hello, you answered. There was silence on the other end. Then a strange, urgent voice spoke, but it was muffled by background noise. You couldn't make it out. Sorry, I can't hear you. I'm going to step outside. You walked out onto the porch into the cool night air. I'm sorry, who is this? A different voice, calm and formal, came on the line. Hello, this is St. Mark's Hospital. I'm calling about a patient named Barbara. The name hit you like a punch to the gut. Barbara, your mother, the woman you hadn't spoken to, hadn't seen in almost 20 years. My mother, you whispered, your throat dry. Is she? Is she okay? She's been in a serious accident. The doctor needs to speak with family immediately. Can you come to the hospital? Your world tilted. All your plans, your determination to save your family suddenly seemed small and meaningless. The real storm had just begun. You rushed into the hospital. The smell of antiseptic hitting you a cold scent of fear and helplessness. Every step you took down the stark white hallway echoed the panic rising in your chest. Your mother, here, after all these years, you found your sister huddled in a chair in the waiting room. The moment she saw you, she burst into tears. What happened? You asked, your voice trembling. I don't know, your sister sobbed. They just called and said she was in surgery. You sat down next to her, a feeling of helplessness washing over you. You pulled out your phone and dialed David. You needed him. You needed a shoulder to lean on, a word of comfort, a solid presence in the middle of this chaos. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. You've reached the voicemail of David. You hung up, your heart sinking. You tried again. Still voicemail. The fear began to give way to a cold anger. Where was he? A moment later, your phone vibrated. It was David. Hey, babe, what's up? I just got out of work. I saw your missed calls. His voice was so calm, so distant. David, where are you? You tried to keep your voice from breaking. My mom, she's in the hospital. She was in an accident. Whoa. What's she doing here? Is she okay? I don't know. I don't have any information. I'm still at the hospital. Can you come, St. Mark's? There was a pause on the other end of the line, a pause that was far too long. I'm sorry, babe, he finally said. I have a critical call in 15 minutes. Some clients on the West Coast time zone. You couldn't believe what you were hearing. Critical. David, my mother is in the emergency room. Can't the call wait? This is an important call. I need to be on it. Besides, you know your mom doesn't like me. How about this? As soon as I'm done, I'll call you back and see if you're still there. You hung up without another word. The feeling of abandonment was more painful than the fear. Even in your worst moment, you were alone. What did he say? Is he coming? Your sister asked. No, you answered, your voice bitter. He has a meeting at 9 o'clock at night. He has a lot of late meetings these days, your sister muttered. The comment was like a needle pricking an open wound. You didn't want to think about it. Not now. Time passed slowly, painfully. Every minute felt like an eternity. Finally, a doctor with a grim expression walked out. Ms. Woods, he asked. I'm Dr. Mitchell. You and your sister quickly stood up. Doctor, how is my mother? It's not good, he said bluntly. But we did everything we could. The good news is, her heart is still beating. But there are some problems. She's unresponsive. We've had to put her on life support. Life support. You repeated the words, sounding foreign and terrifying. Does that mean she won't wake up? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. It's out of our hands now. It felt like the floor had dropped out from under you. You wanted to scream, to shake the doctor, and make him do something. but you just stood there stunned while your sister collapsed into sobs. You can see her now, Dr. Mitchell said, his voice gentle. You shook Nicole, who had fallen asleep in a chair after rushing to the hospital as soon as she heard the news. Nicole, I can see my mom. Can you go open the bakery? The peacock order needs to go out early. Even now, your kingdom was calling. Nicole nodded, her face still groggy, but full of concern. Yeah, I'm up. You took a deep breath and walked into the room. The smell of antiseptic was stronger here. The only sound was the steady, soulless beep of the heart monitor. And there, on the stark white bed, was your mother. She looked so small and fragile, her face etched with wrinkles you had never seen. Her hair was completely white. She was no longer the strong, determined woman from your memory. She was just a frail body kept alive by a web of wires and plastic tubes. You sat in the chair beside the bed, reaching out a hand, but then pulling it back. You didn't know what to do, what to say. 19 years of silence stretched between you like a chasm. The memory came flooding back, as clear as if it were yesterday. You were standing in the living room, your belly already showing. David stood beside you, holding your hand tightly. Across from you was your mother, her face tight with anger. I can't believe it, she said, her voice trembling. What were you thinking, Claire? Getting involved with a man like David. He's not your father. He's your husband. He's not my father, Mom. He's my husband. Dear God, I don't believe in abortion. But this, you're ruining your life, Claire. How many other kids does he have out there? Do you have any idea how hard it is for a mixed-race child to grow up in this world? Do you hear yourself? You screamed, tears streaming down your face. I love him. He's the father of my child. I love you, she said, her voice cold as ice. But if you choose this path, you have to leave my house, and don't come back asking for help when you realize how hard it is out there. That was the last time you spoke to her. You chose David. You chose the child in your womb. You walked out that door and never looked back. Now looking at the woman on the hospital bed, all you felt was regret. A bitter, belated regret. You had been too proud. So had she. You had both let pride and anger destroy your relationship. The door opened. David walked in, a guilty look on his face. I'm here, he said. You didn't even bother to look at him. Where were you? I was in a meeting. It ran a little long. You let out a harsh laugh, completely devoid of humor. My mother is on a ventilator. The doctor says she might not wake up. David moved to hug you, but you stepped back. Don't touch me. Silence filled the room, broken only by the steady beeping of the machines, counting the weak heartbeats of a life hanging in the balance and the shattering beats of a marriage at its end. The next few days passed in a hazy blur of grief, exhaustion, and guilt. You spent most of your time at the hospital, sitting by your mother's bedside, saying the words you should have said years ago. You told her about the bakery, about Chloe, about your life. You spoke into the void, not knowing if she could hear you. The world outside kept spinning cruel and unforgiving. The bakery, your safe haven, was now starting to crumble too. Claire, are you listening to me? Nicole's voice came through the phone, pulling you from your thoughts. The cakes burned. You blinked. Burned. How did they burn? I asked you to watch the oven when we went to lunch. Do you remember? You tried to search your memory. Lunch. The oven. Everything was a fog. I'm sorry. My head. Hey, it's okay, Nicole said quickly, her voice full of understanding. I get it. You're going through a lot. Everyone here understands. Why don't you take a few days off? We can handle things. I can't, you protested immediately. We have too many orders. 300 cupcakes for Michael Sullivan's retirement party, the alt conference on Friday, the Harrison wedding on Saturday. Claire, trust us. Just go home and bake the cookies for Michael Sullivan. We've got the rest. You hesitated, but exhaustion won. You agreed, carrying the guilt of abandoning your kingdom. When you got home, the chaos wasn't over. The house was empty and cold. You couldn't find Chloe. You called her name, but only silence answered. A strange, acrid smell hung in the air. You walked toward Chloe's room. The smell got stronger. Chloe, you called, knocking on the door. I'm coming in. You opened the door. The room was messy as usual, but there was something else. The smell of smoke. Not normal cigarette smoke. Chloe, what is that smell? You asked, your voice stern. Have you been smoking? What, no? Chloe denied, but her eyes darted away. What are you talking about? Don't lie to me. You raised your voice, the stress of the past few days finally exploding. I'm not stupid. You're accusing me for no reason, Chloe shouted back. Tears in her eyes. She pushed past you and ran into her room, slamming the door. You stood frozen in front of the closed door, a wave of helplessness washing over you. Your daughter was lying to you. She was doing something dangerous right under your nose, and you had been too blind to see it. Another failure. That evening when David came home, you were too tired to fight. He still had that distant look. He asked about your mother, but his words were empty, devoid of emotion. You usually wear a tie, you said, suddenly noticing a small but unusual detail. Trying a new style. He seemed startled. No, it's nothing, but it was too late. Your eyes had fallen to his shirt collar. A faint smudge of lipstick, almost unnoticeable. But to you, it was as bright as a searchlight in the dark. Rita, you whispered, reading the name scrawled on a sticky note that fell from his pocket. Claire, I can explain. Explain what, David, how long? Your voice trembled, not with sadness, but with rage. How long, David? You snatched the phone from his hand. He didn't react quickly enough. The password was still Chloe's birthday. How ironic. And there it was in his contacts, Kate Rita. You opened the messages. A flood of romantic texts, plans for dates, promises. Your world completely fell apart. Kate Rita, you repeated, your voice dripping with sarcasm. You weren't even smart enough to come up with a better fake name. Who is she? Is it Amber? He didn't answer. His silence was the answer. How could you do this to me? You screamed, finally letting the fury erupt. All the late meetings, all the business trips, it was all lies. Shh, you'll wake up Chloe, he said, trying to quiet you. Oh, you're afraid your daughter will find out that while I was grieving, while I was alone at the hospital with my mother, you were sleeping with another woman. I wasn't sleeping with her. It was just dinner and wine. Just dinner and wine. You laughed bitterly. You chose her over me, David. You were with her instead of being with me. Why? I don't know, Claire, he said, his voice almost desperate. You were so busy with that bakery. I didn't think you'd ever know. That was the final blow. He hadn't just betrayed you. He was blaming you for your ambition, for your hard work, for the very kingdom you had built. I don't believe you. You said, your voice like ice. I think we need some space. More space, Claire. We might as well be living in two different houses. Maybe we should, you replied, turning your back on him, turning your back on your dead marriage. You didn't sleep that night. You lay on the sofa, listening to the ticking of the clock, each tick a hammer blow to your shattered heart. You had lost your mother, your husband, and it seemed you were losing your daughter too. The next morning, when the silence in the house became too heavy to bear, you decided to find Chloe to talk to, apologize, to try to mend things. But when you opened her door, you found an empty bed and a note left on the pillow. Don't look for me. Pure panic seized you. You screamed for David. David, wake up, Chloe's gone. He stumbled out of the bedroom. Gone, where? I don't know. She's not answering her phone. You started searching her room, your heart pounding. Under the bed, you found an old shoebox. Inside weren't shoes. It was filled with cigarette butts, a small glass pipe, and several empty foil packets. You held the box out to David, your hand trembling. This is what your daughter has been up to. The color drained from his face. Oh, God, Chloe! We have to find her, you said, tears streaming down your face. The animosity between you was temporarily forgotten, replaced by the shared fear of parents. You started calling Chloe's friends while David drove around the neighborhood. Hi, Olivia. Have you heard from Chloe? Hey, Noah. Have you seen Chloe today? The answer was always no. No one knew where she was. Desperation began to gnaw at you. Just when you were about to break, the phone rang. A girl named Isabella, one of Chloe's friends, had heard you were looking for her. I promised her I wouldn't tell anyone, Isabella whispered into the phone. But I heard she was planning to run away with Tyler. Tyler, the son of Mark and Mia, your neighbors. A rebellious kid. Thank you, Isabella. Thank you so much. You told David. She's with Tyler. We have to go to their house. Mark and Karen were just as frantic. They said they had grounded Tyler for 6 months and had recently seen him looking at travel websites, specifically train tickets. The train station, you and David raced to the station, a fragile sliver of hope in the desperate darkness. As you ran through the crowded main hall, you saw them. Chloe and Tyler standing in line at the ticket counter. Chloe, you yelled. She turned her face pale with shock and fear. You ran to your daughter, not knowing whether to hug her or scream at her. A chaotic mix of emotions, relief, anger, heartbreak swirled inside you. What the hell are you doing here, young lady? You asked, your voice trembling with restraint. Running away from home. Why? Chloe started to cry. Mom, don't be mad. There's something I need to tell you. What else could there be? You said, the anger rising again. Besides smoking, doing drugs, and sleeping with a bunch of boys. Not a bunch, Chloe sobbed. Just one. The words were a slap in the face. Your little girl. But there's something else, she whispered, looking up at you with tear-filled eyes. What, you asked, your heart clenching with a terrible premonition. Chloe took a deep breath, looked down at her stomach, then back at you. I'm pregnant. Time seemed to stop. The noise of the station, the announcements, the chatter of people, it all faded away. All that was left was your daughter's words echoing in your head. Pregnant. You looked at David. He was also stunned, his face ashen. Then you looked at Tyler, the boy standing next to Chloe, looking just as scared. He was the father. In that moment, your anger vanished. In its place was a strange sense of déjà vu. You saw yourself nearly 20 years ago in Chloe, a scared young girl, carrying a new life, facing an uncertain future. You had been in her exact position. The memory of the fight with your mother came rushing back. Her anger, her rigidity, and your loneliness. You had sworn that if you ever had a daughter, you would never let her go through that. You stepped forward and wrapped your arms around the trembling Chloe. "Let's go home," you said softly. "We'll figure this out together." That night, after taking Tyler home and having a difficult conversation with his parents, you sat with Chloe in the kitchen. David had gone upstairs, leaving the two of you alone. "I'm so sorry," you began. "I know you must be so scared." "I know," Chloe replied, her voice small. "And I promise I won't smoke or do drugs anymore. And I won't sleep with any more boys. Until I'm 18, right?" You managed a small smile. "Let's make it 25. Chloe smiled back a weak smile. "I love you, Mom. I thought you'd be so mad at me." "Oh, I am mad, Chloe," you admitted. "What you did was wrong. But I love you more than I'm mad at you. You know I made some of the same mistakes you did." You took a deep breath, and for the first time, you told your daughter your story. About getting pregnant with her father when you were young. About how angry your mother, her grandmother, had been, and how she had thrown you out of the house. "When I was pregnant with you, I left and never spoke to my mother again. She was so angry with me. And now, I might never get the chance to talk to her again." Chloe looked at you, her eyes wide with empathy. "No, Mom. Grandma will wake up. But if she doesn't?" "Chloe," you said, your voice cracking, "I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life." You pulled your daughter into a hug. In that moment, the chasm between you seemed to close. You weren't just her mother. You were a friend, a fellow traveler who had endured similar pain. You were both women facing difficult choices, and you both needed each other. You realized that perhaps Chloe's tragedy was the very lifeline your relationship needed. It forced you both to face the truth, to be honest with each other, and to find forgiveness and understanding in one another. The next day, you and David went to the hospital to collect a few of your mother's personal belongings. The nurse said that when she was brought in, she only had a small handbag. Inside the bag, you found her wallet, a few personal items, and her phone. You opened the call log. There was a number with a local area code that had been dialed just before the accident. Curious, you called it back. "Hello, Holiday Inn. How can I help you?" A hotel. Your heart beat faster. Your mother had been at a hotel nearby. "My mother was a guest," you explained quickly. "Barbara, she's been in an accident. Could you tell me if she checked in?" After a few moments, the receptionist confirmed. "Yes, ma'am. The guest checked in a few days ago." You hung up and turned to David. "My mom checked into a hotel on Indian Spring Road. She was on her way to see me when she had the accident." "David, we have to go there." The hotel room was small and anonymous, but to you, it held a world of secrets. Why had your mother come here without telling you? You began to search, not sure what you were looking for. Then you noticed a clean spot on the dusty dresser, a perfect rectangle. A box had been sitting there. David, look for a box, you said. He looked at you confused, but did as you asked. He found it under the bed. An old wooden box. Your mother's memory box. You knew it. It was where she kept her most precious keepsakes. Your hands trembled as you opened the lid. Inside were old photographs, small mementos, and on top, carefully sealed letter. On the envelope, your name was written, for Claire. Your heart stopped. You carefully opened the letter, your mother's handwriting familiar, but so long absent. My dearest Claire, the letter began. I have missed you so much. I have always wished you would come home. What I did was unforgivable, not what you did. I know I should have done this a long time ago, but I never had the courage to stand up to Walter, her second husband. But as a mother, I couldn't bear the thought of my daughter being the target of his wrath. I just want to say I am sorry, Claire. Sorry for not listening to you, for not accepting Ovid and your child. I was a terrible mother. I have asked God to forgive me because no matter what you do or what path you take in the end, you are still my daughter, and I love you. Tears fell onto the page. This letter, she hadn't mailed it. She had decided to bring it herself. She had driven hundreds of miles, overcoming her fear and pride, to apologize to you. And she never made it. You collapsed, clutching the letter to your chest, and you wept. You wept for the lost years, for the words left unsaid for her regret, and your own. The burden you had carried for nearly 20 years was finally lifted. Your mother didn't hate you. She loved you. She had always loved you. The truth in the letter changed everything. The weight of anger and resentment you had carried for so many years dissolved, leaving only a deep sorrow and a belated understanding. Your mother wasn't a cold-hearted monster. She was just a scared mother, trapped in an unhappy marriage, who had made the wrong decisions. Just like you. That night you had a dream. You saw yourself standing in a garden filled with sunshine, and lilies, your mother's favorite flower. Your mother was there smiling at you. She looked young and healthy, with no trace of illness or age. You finally made it to church, she said, her voice teasing. David made me go, you replied, feeling like a child again. Don't lie, little girl. I know you love the Lord just as much as I do. She stepped forward and gently stroked your hair. I'm so proud of you. I miss you so much. You whispered, tears welling up again. I wish we had never stopped talking. I wish we had more time. I know, Claire, she said, her eyes gentle. But what is written will be. Perhaps it's time for me to go home. I'm not ready for you to go, you sobbed. Always remember that I love you, and I will always be watching over you, she said, and her image began to fade, melting into the brilliant light. You woke up, tears still on your cheeks, but with a strange peace in your heart. You knew what you had to do. At church, the pastor's sermon seemed meant just for you. He spoke of forgiveness. If you forgive those who sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you refuse to forgive others, your Father will not forgive your sins. The words sank deep into your soul. You needed to forgive. Forgive David for his betrayal. Forgive your mother for the past hurts. And most importantly, forgive yourself for the mistakes you had made. But forgiveness came with a painful decision. The doctors said there was only a 10% chance your mother would ever wake up. They suggested you consider taking her off life support. I can't do it. You told David on the way home from the hospital, "It's not the right decision." "Claire, I know this is hard," he said, "but the doctors said, the chances are so slim. No matter what you choose, the end result for her is death." "No," you shouted. "You're wrong. She's still in there. I'm holding on to that 10%. I can't pull her plug. I always wanted to make things right with her. I can't do that if I give up now." "My mother used to say," David said softly, "to leave things in God's hands." You looked at him. For the first time in days, you really saw him. You saw the exhaustion and the pain in his eyes. He was wrestling with his own demons. "Okay," you whispered, "I'll do that. God will take her soul when it's time, but not now." You had made your decision. You would not play God. You would let faith guide you. Meanwhile, David's life was also at a crossroads. He received a voicemail. It was Susan from HR. "Hello, Mr. Woods. We've completed our investigation into your sexual misconduct with Ms. Martin. Unfortunately, we will have to terminate your employment. Given the situation, we are unable to provide you with any positive letters of recommendation." When you got home, you found David sitting silently on the couch, phone in hand. "What's wrong?" you asked. He looked up at you, his eyes empty. "I was fired." Amber had made good on her threat. She had ruined his career. You didn't feel a sense of victory. You just felt an empty sadness. Everything had fallen apart. In the days that followed, a strange quiet settled over your house. There were no more arguments, no more accusations, just a dull ache and the uncertainty of the future. You, David, and Chloe were like three survivors of a shipwreck, adrift on a makeshift raft in the middle of the ocean. One evening, as you were sitting in the living room, David came and sat beside you. "I'm truly sorry, Claire," he said, his voice more sincere than it had ever been. "About what happened with your mom. About everything." You nodded, saying nothing. "I was thinking," he continued, "maybe we should go somewhere. A trip. Just the three of us. A road trip." You looked at him. A trip. It sounded like a desperate attempt to patch together something that was irrevocably broken. "I don't know David," you said honestly. "I've been away from the bakery for so long, I don't trust Nicole with it." "That's okay," he said. "We'll find another time, but—" He paused, looking directly into your eyes. "But I want you to know that I'm not giving up. Not on us." You looked out the window, where the sun was setting, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. The end of a day, but also the promise of a new one. You didn't know what the future held. You didn't know if you could ever truly forgive David. You didn't know if your family could ever heal. But for the first time in a long time, you felt a flicker of hope. A few weeks later, the hospital called. Your mother had passed away peacefully in her sleep. There was no pain, no struggle. She had simply gone home. You didn't cry. You had cried all your tears. You just felt a sense of peace. She was free. And so were you. At the funeral, you stood beside David and Chloe. You were no longer a queen in a bakery kingdom, or a betrayed wife, or a failed mother. You were simply Claire, a woman who had walked through the storm and survived. You looked at your daughter and saw that her belly was beginning to show. A new life was on its way, a new generation, a new beginning. You looked at your husband and saw in his eyes both remorse and determination. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be bad days, and the scars would ache. But you knew you weren't alone anymore. They were a family, an imperfect, broken family, but a family nonetheless. As the service ended, you took David's hand. He squeezed it back. It wasn't a resolution. It wasn't a happy ending. But it was a promise to try. And for you right now, that was enough. You had gone from go big or go home to realizing that sometimes just coming home with all its imperfections and messiness was the biggest victory of all. If you found this story helpful, please like and subscribe to Porchlight Diaries with family stories so I can keep sharing. Comment where you're watching from and which part touched your heart. Maybe it'll send a little hope to someone who needs it today. Thank you for listening with such kindness.